good morning, good evening, depending where you are joining us from. You are all welcome to this event. My name is Giovanni Munoz with the Investment Center, and we are very happy to have you here today participating on this event, which is the launching event of the new social analysis for inclusive agri-food investments that comes as guidelines and together with an e-learning course. We will appreciate you have seen now on your screen popping up a small poll that we will appreciate if you can fill it in the next few minutes, and then just close it, or it will disappear once you fill it in. We also have a few additional housekeeping aspects that you can find in the chat. They are being posted as we speak, so please check them so that you will understand better how the event is going to roll out. We'll be here with you for about 90 minutes, 1.5 hours. But before we go into more details, let me show you briefly our agenda. We are going to have a session in which for which we have a very rich participation that we'll go into in a moment. As you see, we are first starting with some welcoming remarks that we'll go into in a few seconds. We'll then are going to deliver a presentation with an overview of what the guides on this social analysis are. And then we'll also go into an overview of the e-learning courses that have been developed tailoring these new guides. We will then have the opportunity to respond to your questions. So from now, I tell you, whenever you have a question during the presentations, please use the Q&A facility that you see at the bottom of your screen. And after the Q&A session, we are going to have a panel discussion where we will be able to hear from different partners on the subject of these guides for social analysis. And then we'll come to a close, as I say, 90 minutes from now. Now, we also want to briefly tell you about the participants that we have in this event today. As you can see, we have a large number of participants. Just to mention at this moment that we have, besides, as you see on the top row, several people here from FAO. We also have some of our main partners participating in the event today, people representing the World Bank, IFAD, the African Development Bank, the European Investment Bank. Without much ado, then let me move first to invite the director of the Investment Center, Mr. Mohamed Mansouri, who is going to give some welcoming remarks. Mr. Mansouri, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Yeah, many thanks, Giovanni. And let me say, the picture that was shown of me was much younger, so I'm still the same. Maybe to change this. Thank you, Giovanni, and really welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us, all friends and colleagues, as we launch the new guides and e-learning courses on social analysis for inclusive agri-food investments. This launch comes as the UN Climate Change Conference concludes. As you know, a key goal of COP28 was inclusivity and ensuring that voices from the diverse communities most vulnerable to climate change are heard. In this world where inequality is growing, exacerbated by conflicts and climate change, boosting inclusive and transformative investments is a crucial path to build resilience. It is vital that vulnerable, excluded, and marginalized farming communities, but also urban communities who are central to solutions for transforming agri-food systems, are empowered to be drivers of resilience and sustainable change. Drawing from more than 4 decades of experience in social analysis at the FAO Investment Center, we've learned that people-centered approaches are crucial in our drive to boost food security and nutrition and reduce inequality. Inclusive approaches are enshrined in the UN Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 1, no poverty, SDG 2, zero hunger, and SDG 10, reduced inequality. Inclusion is a central promise of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. On the other side, FAO Strategic Framework 2231 seeks to support the 2030 Agenda through the transformation to more inclusive, efficient, resilient, and sustainable agri-food systems for better production, better nutrition, and better environments, and better life, leaving no one behind. Supporting inclusive investments in agri-food systems is a fundamental pillar of our national, regional, and global commitments. It is what elevates the quality of our investment support, ensuring investments are not just financially sound, but socially empowering and sustainable. But what does inclusivity or inclusiveness mean in practice? It means understanding and addressing the structural drivers of inequality. It means targeting our public and private investments in a way that responds to the realities, needs, and priorities of farmers who are vulnerable and marginalized, including women, youth, indigenous peoples, minority groups, and other populations who are at risk of exclusion. It also means, because we are working on the agri-food systems, to enable and empower consumers, and enhance all citizens, to have access to better food and better lives. It means putting the social dimensions of rural transformation at the core of our efforts and striking the right balance between economic, environmental, and social impact. These guides aid us in making our investments more people-centered and consequently more sustainable. The challenges and opportunities we are facing generate a powerful momentum for social analysis to contribute to improving the quality of investment strategies, programs, and projects. This applies to all investments, whether they are public or private, domestic or foreign, international financial institutions, and I'm happy that some of them are around, our friends from the World Bank, IFAD, EIB, and others. IFIs are responding to the evolving needs by raising their standards for social risk assessment and broadening the scope, complexity, and cross-sectoral nature of their investment operations. This is generating pressing demand on managers of investment operations and on practitioners who conduct social analysis. So we hope that the practical tools, experts' advice, pragmatic approaches contained in these guides will integrate seamlessly with the social safeguards and inclusivity standards that our partner agencies already have in place. So our goal is really to work together with you all to deepen and enrich the quality of social analysis in agri-food systems, leaving no one behind in the drive toward better production, better environment, better nutrition, and a better life. And I think this is really a very good motto to work together. And I think around here we have all the major partners that can benefit from this work. I would like just to finally thank all the colleagues and friends who have contributed to reviving those, those tools and renewing them in the, in the current context, and especially whether with the FAO, the colleagues working on the e-learning tools like Christina or others, but also all the partners that have reviewed, supported, and helped us enhance, those tools. Thank you very much. Back to you, Giovanni.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mohammed, for that introduction and framing so well the origin and the purpose of these guidelines that we are so excited to introduce today. Let me go directly to the authors. There are two authors actually of these guidelines that now they are going to give us an overview. The authors are my colleague Ida Christiansen here at the Investment Center. She is our senior rural sociologist, and also Monica Romano, who is a poverty and inclusion specialist at the FAO's Rural Transformation and Gender Equality Division. They are going to make the overview starting now. Ida, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you, everybody. And let me just check that you can see my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we see it well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Giovanni and Mohammed as well for setting the scene so nicely. It is a very big day for us, all of us here who have contributed. So we're very, very grateful for your participation. So with that said, we will dive straight into the guides, and I will walk you through it together with Monica, starting now with who the guides are for. So the objective of the guides is to improve the design and implementation of inclusive agri-food investments that contribute, the focus on or contribute to reducing rural poverty and food insecurity, that respond to the needs and priorities of target groups, that safeguard the interest of vulnerable groups. Very importantly, reduce inequalities under SDG 10, also mentioned by Mohammed, and ultimately contributing to realizing the principle of leaving no one behind, which is core for the Agenda 30. So these guides, we hope, will complement the wide range of FAO guidance that is out there, but these ones are focusing specifically on the investment context. And we also see them adding value to the guidance of financing institutions because they bring a very strong food systems focus. So let us just bring everyone on the same page by reminding ourselves about what it is that social analysis is. You can see here and read the definition that we're using in the guides. So as you see, the definition is broad because it seeks to capture the complexity of human interaction. So it looks at culture, institutions, political aspects. It looks at social norms that often drive social and economic exclusion, and these are very often overlooked. We look at what the guides offer, and you can see here quite a range of things, guidance to carry out social analysis in the context of investments or agri-food investments, using both qualitative and quantitative data, and some primary data collection also from the field. We offer operational tools, a range of them that must be adjusted and used selectively, because let us not forget that social analysis is highly context specific, and therefore they need to be used, as I said, selectively and adapted. And then we have references with the links to further resources that can deepen the analysis as needed. Now, who are the guides for? We have actually two main groups of users here. We have the managers, the users of the manager's guide, which would be managers including project directors, coordinators, task leaders, task managers of a wide range of investment operations. These are non-experts, so non-social science, so social analysts. And then we've got the second group of users who will be using the practitioners and the field guide as needed. And those would typically be sociologists, anthropologists, social and gender inclusion experts, could be rural institution specialists as well, who are typically hired by the managers to actually carry out the social analysis, including through missions. So we will be walking you through all those three guides today very briefly, and I will pass it now on to Monica to start presenting the manager's guide. Monica, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ida, and I'm really pleased to present the manager's guide, this work we have done together. The manager's guide, as you have already anticipated, Ida, it is mainly for managers, directors, coordinators, team leaders, those basically managing the investment processes. In the manager guide, we tried making a compelling case on why social analysis is relevant to agri-food investments and should not be overlooked. The manager's guide elaborates on how social analysis can be integrated at each stage of the investment cycle. It explains the roles and responsibilities in relation to social analysis, and it should be used in conjunction with the practitioner guide. Now, when it comes to the first two modules, we have 4 modules in total. The module 1 explains why social analysis is important and what should we expect out of it. So now we know well that progress made over the past decades in reducing poverty and hunger has been remarkable. However, economic growth was not always inclusive or equitable. Poverty persists. Socioeconomic inequalities have been widening and continue to widen. And also there are poverty pockets and people or groups, especially certain ones, that are left behind. So to achieve SDG 1, SDG 2, SDG 10, as mentioned by Mr. Mansouri, we need to reach out to those left behind. And who are they? They are generally the poor, the poorest, the extreme poor, the food insecure, living in rural areas of developing countries and depending on agri-food systems. So to reach out to them, we need to better understand and appreciate the social landscape with all its diversity and complexity. And we need to also define more targeted interventions and inclusive targeting strategies. Module 2 presents what is the scope of social analysis, which is quite broad. It's assessing the social landscape, as already mentioned, carrying out gender, youth, and analysis of other groups, indigenous peoples analysis, assessing poverty, rural livelihoods, defining targeting strategies and mechanisms, identifying what are the social risks that can be anticipated or expected, and corresponding mitigating mechanisms, and also setting up M&E systems with indicators that should be disaggregated to allow for monitoring targeting performance, and also assessing outcome and impact levels results, specifically in the social domain. Now, social analysis takes place from the macro level. We know, so it's more country strategy or nationwide level, which entails analyzing the policy, legal, and institutional framework, down to the meso level and down to the community level, which is also the project target area. And then, of course, we have social impact assessment, which is made during implementation, and it is deepened as long as the implementation advances up to completion and the evaluation. Now, module 3 and 4, before going to that, it's what makes a good social analysis? Sorry, this is also important to say. Should be consultative, should be participatory, attentive to cultural sensitivities, interdisciplinary. So all team members should integrate this social dimension into their own technical areas of work. And we should also be realistic. We cannot assess everything because time often is a constraint. So we need to prioritize and also triangulate information to gain the most out of it. Modules 3 and module 4 is about integrating social analysis in each stage of the investment cycle. And we have a nice slide with a graph showing the main tasks that are in the next slide required to be performed at the various stages, and also in the following slide we also listed those tasks so that the manager can also see when they are expected to be performed. We can see also there are some of them, stakeholder analysis, risk assessment, and management. They go throughout all the stages. In addition to these tools, we also developed a glossary, which key terminology on social aspects, and also this matrix you see a snapshot of it with the requirements for social analysis as based on the policies, strategies, guidelines, social safeguards relating 12 development agencies or IFIs, so that they can be accessed, let's say, easily in one repository. And finally, TORs, terms of reference. So there are two main sets of terms of reference: 4 technical experts on missions, and at each stage of the investment cycle, in fact, but also for project staff, because also responsibility of social analysis or social aspects should also be attached to the project management unit, and also at the level of service providers, particularly for community and social mobilizers. And finally, talking about TORs, of course, just the last point on the responsibility and operational arrangements for social analysis. Social analysis and integrating social aspects into the investment cycle is the responsibility of everybody. Governments, the concerned agency, the implementers, including the service providers, as we have seen, the team leader, and all the mission members. The social aspects should be integrated into their respective TORs, but this also doesn't mean that there shouldn't be specific expertise. In fact, a specific expertise is required, again, at the technical level for mission work and at the project management, the project implementation level. That's it on my side, on the manager's guide. Thank you for your attention, and Ida, over to you.
Thanks, Monica. That brings us right into the practitioner's guide, which is in fact for the experts. So as said before, the practitioner's guide, as you see, provides an analytical framework. We're going to look at this in just a minute, and a wide range of practical tools. And it can be used in conjunction with the field guide, which we'll also be looking at. So this is the analytical framework that guides the various tasks in the social analysis that we have in the practitioner's guide. So I will walk you through bit by bit. It might look a little bit complex, but it starts with the analysis of livelihood assets in the middle, putting people at the center. As you can see, the individual within the household, within the community, having access to a combination of livelihood assets. And it moves to look at the influence of vulnerability, looking at exposure to shocks that can have an enormous impact on people's assets and capacities to cope. It also looks at how strengthening people's asset base can build resilience against those shocks. So these are the loops you see there. And when we talk about vulnerability, we refer to climatic shocks, conflicts, and more. Which is all in the guide. Then a consideration of here on the right, you see how the available asset base and the exposure to shocks, how those determine the range of people's livelihood strategies, and how they contribute to the value chain, the agri-food value chain you see on the right, through off-farm activities and also non-farm activities, because we are looking at food systems here beyond agriculture. Livelihood strategies can lead to positive or negative outcomes, which you see here at the bottom, that result into strengthening or depleting people's assets, or they result in improving or worsening the food security situation, which you also see here assessed around the 4 dimensions. So on the whole, as you see, this framework combines the livelihoods approach, which we think is still very much relevant for this type of analysis, and the food systems approach. And it provides a basis of systemic thinking that can help us both understand and address the drivers of inequality. I forgot to mention a very crucial, actually, area of analysis, which is the institutional environment, which you see here circled, the policies across all relevant sectors, laws, governance, but also, very importantly, the informal institutional structures that are closer to the community. Now, we talk a lot about inclusivity. Who are we inclusive of? Look, you can see the definition that we have in the guides. This graph captures the richness and the complexity of our target groups, the extent of diversity. You see the types of target groups we usually deal with here in the middle, but then you also see a number of intersecting identities that you see around in the green parts, and those all combined can lead some population groups to a higher risk of exclusion. So viewing it this way promotes this understanding of the diversity, and it also forces us to consider the intersectionality, which can help us identify opportunities to tailor interventions appropriately and to empower different groups with appropriate actions. Now, going into the modules, and I will not go too much in detail here, but I just want to say that we have one module dedicated to social analysis in the context of investment strategies. Those could be national strategies, or it could be IFI, international financing institution, country engagement strategies, and so on. And what we have here, and this is the way we've structured the guide also in later modules, it's that what are the tasks that needs to be done for the analysis, and how do you turn the results of that analysis into the required outputs, which you see here at the bottom. And some of those were mentioned by Monica, so I will not dwell on this. We do have the module 3 here is actually the biggest module of all the 3 guides. It's on social analysis in the context of project design, and there you have a lot of very important tasks, again, under analysis and output. So analyzing the multidimensional poverty and social inequalities and turning those findings into specific strategies, be they gender strategies, youth strategies, indigenous people strategies, depending on the context. Also, very importantly, defining the project activities and tailoring them specifically to the target groups. We mentioned this before. Part of that is also to calculate project costs, which is very important in the investment context. Defining delivery mechanisms for social inclusion is crucial, because that would ensure that the actions are actually being implemented, and how to embed social aspects in M&E systems, which were also mentioned by Monica. And then we have a module on implementation and evaluation. So all the way from project startup until evaluation, what are the tasks that need to be carried out in order to ensure social inclusion, and also in project startup, and especially in early implementation, how to include social aspects in baselines and so on. So moving on to just give you a flare of the samples, the tools we have available. We have 16 reference tools to aid the analysis. You see 2 examples here, theory of change and results framework, just some good examples that we found. We have a number of other examples of indicators, for example, which you can look at in your own time. We are also offering a compendium of the useful resources, around 20 thematic areas, and those are organized under macro level social analysis, which is for the country level, and then also the project level social analysis. So there is a lot there, including on social protection, on decent employment and child labor. There's a lot of different themes. We also have 12 gender checklists in a separate booklet, which you can look at, also organized by sector and by theme. Now, I will not spend too much time on the field guide, but I will go through it. It gives guidance on collecting primary data and using rapid qualitative methods, given the time constraints we usually have in these situations. It also offers checklists and field tools. So I will just show you what the field guide walks us through. The user will look at how to prepare the field work, and you can see here some of the areas, how to collect data and information at the district level and at the community level through community meetings, focus group discussions, and individual households. And what we have here is checklists for each level, as well as for each phase of the project cycle. And we also include under module 4, which you see here in the bubble on the right, we have 20 field tools that can help with the data collection. So this is very lastly, just to say that we have some methodological principles included in the field guide, which are crucial and very important to look at the principle of how to do how to be participatory, flexible, culturally sensitive, down to how to interact at the field level. Data validity is important, the reliability, how to triangulate the data, how to minimize bias. The selection of what data to use is also crucial, and that's where the checklists come in handy, and those should be used selectively as well. Now, capturing voices that are not usually heard is crucial in this process, and we provide guidance on that. And very importantly, as Monica said before, the collaboration aspects, the work that the social analyst will have to do, cutting across all sectors and disciplines, talking to specialists from other sectors like the economists, the agronomists who don't necessarily speak the same language. So these are all very important aspects to take into account. This is the very last slide, just to show you what those checklists look like. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I will pass it on back to Giovanni. Giovanni, thank you. I will stop sharing.
Thank you. Thank you very much, both Ida and Monica, for that very detailed, exhaustive presentation. I think you have now made curious all other audience who I'm sure will dive now into the just published set of guidelines that you can find the links in our chat. They're already live, and you can already download this information. Let me also remind you that we encourage you to post your questions on the Q&A section at the bottom of the menu that you have, so that we can then respond to them in a session a little bit later on. Now, before we go into that, we are going to have now Ms. Cristina Petracchi, who is our leader of the FAO e-learning academy in FAO, to introduce the e-learning material that has been produced associated also with these guides. Cristina, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Giovanni, and I have some thanking to do. So I'd like to start by thanking Ida Christensen for the excellent coordination in the development of the e-learning courses, in all the activities that it entailed. I also need to thank the 3 instructional designers that were involved and that have worked for months behind the scenes. So Fabiola Franco, Loredana De Giovanni, and Reshma Sanyal from India. And of course, special thanks to the director of the Investment Center, Mohammed, with whom, because we have been working very successfully with many teams on many courses. So our special thanks to the director. So I'd like to, as mentioned, the social analysis courses basically cover the same content that Ida and Monica described. So they're fully based on the guides, and they are all available on the FAO e-learning academy. You will have the direct link to the courses directly provided on the chat, so you can access them easily. The overall objective of the courses are to try to improve the design and implementation of agri-food investment, of course, but to try to get them to be more people-centered, more socially inclusive, more gender equitable, more resilient, and of course more socio-economically and environmentally sustainable, with the overall goal to strengthen investment outcomes, impacts, and sustainability. The courses are self-paced, so you can do them whenever you want, from wherever you are, following your own pace. They are targeted to specific audiences that we mentioned. So you have the course for the managers, the practitioner, and the field experts. They are all competency-based. Now, this is an important point, because what we are trying to transfer here is not only knowledge and skills, but we are mainly transferring competences. We want the professionals in the countries to be able to basically implement agri-food investments using social analysis. So the courses are competency-based. They are all based on adult learning theories that are used throughout. They are certified, and I'll come back to this. and they are free. This is an important thing. It's offered as a global good. We try to also use as much as possible. We have used innovative methodologies and practices as described by Ida earlier. They are aligned with those specific professional profiles. They're gender and culturally sensitive. And we use, of course, latest pedagogical models to try to increase interaction and basically allow them to be accessible to different audiences.
Christina, if you don't mind, in the display settings, please change the view so that we can see full screen. Thank you.
So I think I have to do this. Is it okay?
Excellent, thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we are using innovative pedagogical models. Like, for example, we're using case-based scenarios. We have used different scenarios and also storytelling. We're using also pedagogical agents and avatars to basically try to look at the implementation of social analysis through the lens, through the perspective of a manager or a practitioner. And we use a lot of job aids, checklists. We use also scenario-based assessments in the courses. And of course, cutting-edge authoring tools and softwares that I'm not going to mention to increase interactivity and to increase basically the interest of learners. I'd like to go back to what we were mentioning, that the courses are certified. So this is a very important point, and they are certified through the digital badge certification system. This is basically a new system that is adopted that allows to basically increase employment opportunity and opportunities and also progress talents within organizations. So the digital badges is a system that is visible, it's transparent, it's shareable, it's verifiable. But what does it concretely mean? It means that after you do the courses, if you pass the final test, which is a competency-based test, you earn a digital badge that certifies that you have acquired the specific competences related to the course. And then it is shareable because you can then carry the badge through your LinkedIn, your CV, your e-portfolio. It follows you. And you can build also different professional profiles by accumulating different badges. Behind the badge, you have all the metadata related to your name, the competences acquired, the date, the courses that have been done. I also wanted to now mention a few words about the FAO e-learning academy, because the courses are available on the FAO e-learning academy. The academy offers over 500 multilingual courses. These courses are done with many partners throughout the world. And so far, we have reached over 1 million learners worldwide. The idea is really to transfer skills and competences and allow anyone to have access to these resources. In fact, the overall objective is universal education, allowing anybody to access and trying to promote as much as possible gender and social inclusion. So allowing also marginalized individuals, people in conflict areas, vulnerable groups, anybody can have access to education and have the same rights. And we're using a system that is climate and environment friendly, of course. And with the certification system, the idea is to try to bridge the gap between formal and informal education. So basically allowing professionals from wherever they are to acquire in a very efficient manner the competences they need to be operational, to be competent and competitive locally directly. So this is a little bit the idea. I also wanted to mention that we work with many partners throughout the world, and we will certainly leverage our partnerships to promote the social analysis courses throughout and increase the uptake at national level. We're also part of many UN initiatives and networks, and we will also use those networks for the dissemination and promotion. I also wanted to mention that we could use different methodologies. Now that the courses and the guides are ready, we could also think of other delivery methods that could also increase the uptake, like MOOCs, for example, or blended learning program, or we could think also of technical webinars targeted to the different audiences. And that's it for me. I wanted to invite you all to visit the FAO e-Learning Academy. Here you have the link, and we have documented our methodologies and all our achievements. So come and visit. And thank you very, very much for your time and for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina, for that very detailed presentation. I'm also sure that you have now created a lot of interest on our participants on this e-learning course that is already available and online. So we invite you all to visit our e-learning website and take these courses along with the many courses that Christina described they have already in their platform. So we are now going to move into the question and answer session. But before we do that, actually, we have the results of the poll that we had asked you to fill in as you were coming into this event today. And just to let you know, we are showing them now on the screen, and you can actually scroll down and see all the details. We see that we have participants from literally almost all continents. We're only missing Oceania, probably because they are now sleeping, most of them. But we do have many participants from Europe, Africa, Asia, North America, and Latin America. We are grateful to have you all here with us today. As you see also, we have people from many different international organizations, but also from governments, intergovernmental organizations, not governmental organizations, and civil society. Quite a few of us from the United Nations, you can see, but also from universities, and also a good number of individuals. We are also happy to see that we have a good gender balance, 52 and 46% male and female respectively. And in terms of the familiarity with social analysis, we see that the majority of you, if not all, have some level of experience and knowledge on the subject. So that is great to see. Thank you very much for that. Now we are moving into the question and answer session. We have received some questions, and still we encourage you to put more on the question and answer tab at the bottom of your screens. But let me then start with the first one that we have received. And I'll probably ask Ida if you could please respond on the question, which I'll read it out. How can we ensure that adequate social analysis is done during project design when the international financial institutions are cutting down on project preparation budgets, leading managers to prioritize other design tasks? Well, this is I guess a relatively common problem, given that now we have a ever-growing complex project preparation and always limited budget for the work. Ida, can you please try to address this question?
Yes, this is actually a very big question, and it's one we're struggling with, and we were struggling with, in fact, when we were developing the guides. So there are actually two parts of the question. One is the kind of the doing it with the cut cost, but also, you know, the convincing perhaps of the usefulness to prioritize certain, you know, why prioritize other tasks and not social analysis. So these are the two parts of that understand this question has. So let me just say, I think, I mean, the cost for social analysis can be reduced in a number of ways. There are, first of all, making the best possible use of existing information that is available in a lot of places. And we have the practitioner's guide points to how to do that systematically through really going through secondary data reviews in a lot of detail. So avoid reinventing the wheel, reducing questionnaire fatigue, this type of thing is very important. And that already cuts a lot of costs without cutting on the quality. Now, during design, there's also a way to defer certain detailed work on gender, youth, rural institutions analysis to the initial stages of project implementation, for example, and those would then be, go under the project funds and not under the project preparation budgets. And that is one way to go about this type of issues, especially in the manager's guide. I think we have some guidance on that. So basically, incorporate a lot of those things within what is planned to happen in year one of a project. For example, baselines or value chain studies, and ensure that the social considerations are embedded there. So this is another way of going about it. And for managers, we also suggest systematically to rely as much as possible on national counterparts, national consultants and service providers who are on the ground and can provide continuity throughout the whole design process. So it's not just the missions doing things, but there's and that also during that process you build capacities, national capacities for the process. So this is on the other part with the prioritizing and how to. I think there is a lot we can do still to demonstrate better the cost benefit of social analysis in order to also illustrate and convince for managers the usefulness of doing this. And we do provide a lot of guidance on how to strengthen M&E systems, for example, within the practitioner's guide, and how to share evaluation findings, gather and share good practices that we can then use to build in future investments. So I think those things are I think quite important to consider. It is a challenge, I agree, but our guides are aware of this and trying to find ways around it. I hope I answered the question.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ida, for very detailed response. Let me move to a second question that we have received, and I'll ask Monica if she can attempt to respond to it. The question is, could you please elaborate on how we can use the guides for project risk management, that is safeguards and do no harm, for example, on screening, assessing, and managing risk? Monica, please go ahead.
Thank you. This is actually an important question, and because risk management is very much inherent to social analysis. So it's something that cannot and should not be overlooked. So the guides, and particularly the practitioner guide, all of them, in fact, all of them, because it's also for managers, they really embed and integrate this risk assessment and the risk management principle. Now, this doesn't mean that the guides are meant to be a substitute of the social safeguards, which are mandated by the various agencies and institutions, but they are complementary. Now, just to make an example of the integration of the risk, basically the main risk the guides attempt to address, be considered, and mitigate if coming up is the risk of exclusion, especially exclusion of the poorest, the more marginalized, those that would suffer the most for exclusion, or for elite capture, or for any harm that can be caused by risks or any adverse impact from the project, contextual risks, or capacity gaps. Because we see that a lot of risks arise because of capacity gaps that emerge at different levels during investment implementation, the implementation of investments. Now, how the guides try to address and mitigate these risks? Through risk assessments at all levels, from upstream down to each stage of the investment cycle, and also at the level of specific technical areas, be it gender, for example, working on gender issues, gender equality issues, or in the context of value chain interventions. Also through the identification of specific activities or mechanisms, for example, to detect any risk of harm, or for example, beneficiary feedback mechanisms, grievance redress mechanisms, etc. And then I think the most important is the tools, checklist, and tips that are included in the guides, also as annexes, with specific and concrete examples. For example, there is a table with categorization of social risks. Of course, they draw mostly from this, the literature available on the various social safeguards of the major institutions. And so categorizing the risk, what kind of risk, and then how it can be addressed to activities or any mitigating strategy. So we try to really embed this element into the guides and provide some concrete entry points to anticipate, address, and manage and continue monitor those risks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monica. We let us move quickly to see if we can answer a few more questions here. We have another one coming from Maman Sani, who is saying, this is an excellent toolbox, but who do we categorize as practitioners? And he lists the task teams, clients, client consultant. Ida, can you please shed some light on that?
Sure. So who do we categorize as practitioners is quite a broad group, as I mentioned when I was describing the intended users of the guide. So practitioners are the people who will be asked to carry out social analysis or work with supporting missions or not only missions, the design processes, implementation, and so on. So let me kind of think about where those people, where we envisage those people to be sitting. A lot, our prime user group is in the country, so it's national partners that, and we are looking to strengthen the capacities of national partners, whether they are sitting in an NGO or a government or a ministry. Those are the prime, let's say, people that we have in mind. They are not necessarily, they don't necessarily have the same educational background, but they function as sociologists or rural institution specialists, community development specialists, sometimes social and gender inclusion experts. These are the type of people that we envisage. Now, practitioners are usually field-based, or they do a lot of field work, but not necessarily. You can have a social analyst asked to support a country strategy, for example, doing desk work and secondary data review. So it's not necessarily, you know, so these categories are fluid. Practitioners, field and managers guide can actually be used by so many different groups. I hope I have answered the question and made clear that the prime target group here is the national based counterparts. Over.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ida. And I think we just have just a couple of minutes to try to address one last question. I think that we can still include in our question and answer session. And the question comes from Israel Klug. It says, congratulations on the launch and comprehensive tools, from framework to possible methodologies and data collection tools, all fully referenced. Thank you for that comment. Now the question is, it says, you mentioned institutions at the framework level. Do the guides include as well options of methods and data collection for assessing formal institutions? What is the potential to use nationally representative data, for example, household, dietary surveys, and others, along descriptive analysis to complement more granular or tailored analysis using the tools you mentioned? Let me ask Ida, and maybe Monica can complement afterwards. Floor is yours, Ida.
Thank you, Israel. So the question is, the quick answer to the question is yes, we do have, and we do include tools in the practitioner's guide. In fact, there is quite a lot of steps under module 3 that you will find on stakeholder analysis, and within that there are a number of areas that we advise you look at in order to assess formal institutions and the maturity of formal institutions, the capacities of those institutions, and what then after that, following the analysis of institutions, how you can actually tailor interventions within the project design to strengthen those capacities. And I will perhaps Monica can complement a little bit on the second part of the question. Monica, I see you shake your head, so you're okay taking the...
Thank you,
Ida. Sure. Okay.
Yeah, just to complement on what you have just said, in fact, there are indicators that have been, identified to monitor the maturity and the development status of the institutions, and then also, of course, upstream, because we already referred to the upstream analysis. It's the entire analysis of the institutional framework. Now, here in these questions is not specified whether it means institutions or organizations. It's possible it is both, but in any case, so the analysis is done for both institutions, formal and informal, as Ida was mentioning, and also organizations. And this is attempted to be made at all levels, so with specific guiding questions and checklists, trying addressing all these aspects and levels. Also, a good, as Ida mentioned already, then we refer to specific tools to deepen this kind of analysis for organizational analysis, organizational development, and various community-based organizations or institutions. On the second part, on the dietary surveys, we have mentioned quite many in the guides: dietary diversity scores, food consumption scores, because also the nutritional element and dietary diversity element is quite present in the guides, because it's really important to address the food insecurity and hunger issue. So it's found there, and of course, again, specific resources, if needed, are referred to. And finally, on other complementary methods of analysis, there is mention of the knowledge, attitude, and practice type of tool, which is relatively simple to monitor changing attitudes and practices at the local level, and also the annual outcome surveys. Both these tools are quite relatively simple and cost-effective to be implemented in the field. They can be used in a sample of villages or communities, and can be complementary to get especially more data on the outcome level results, especially the qualitative level. I hope I responded. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much to both Ida and Monica for responding to the questions. And thank you for the participants for your interest. I see we have many more questions. I apologize. Unfortunately, will not have enough time to address all the questions, but with all this interest, we sincerely hope that you will read the guidelines, analyze them. I'm sure we are convinced that you will find answers to most of your questions in the guidelines themselves. So we invite you to download them, participate also in the e-learning course, and in any case, contact us if you have further feedback or comments, as our contacts are in the publications themselves. Now we are moving on to the next session that we have for today, our panel discussion. With that, then I'll first like to introduce the panelists in this moment, who are first. I see Chris Brett is from the World Bank. He's a lead agribusiness specialist. Welcome to the panel, Chris. We also have Ms. Beatriz Gerli from the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD. She's a senior gender and targeting specialist. Welcome, Beatriz. We also have Ms. Ana Muya Retebuka, Chief Social Safeguard Specialist with the African Development Bank. Welcome. We also have Ms. Francesca Russo, Senior Social Development Specialist at the European Investment Bank, the EIB. And finally, we also have our colleague from FAO, Adriano Campolina, a Senior Policy Officer. So welcome to all of you, and thank you very much for taking the time to join us to this, as we say, a very important event on the launching of these new guidelines. So without much ado, let me go directly into the questions and see if we can have a conversation here about the usefulness of this new material that we are putting out live today. So let me start with you, Chris, and tell me, please, what do you think the World Bank managers Are they actually sufficiently aware of the need to mainstream social issues into investment projects? What are the challenges that they face in doing it, and how could these guidelines help raise their commitment and strengthen their skill to deliver support to their clients? Please, Chris, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, what an amazing launching. I mean, it's incredible, these guys. They're incredibly comprehensive. I will confess that I read a fair bit of them, but it's so much to go through. So I'm looking forward to working further. So just to say, so I'm Chris Brett. I sit in the Agriculture and Food Global Practice at the World Bank, which is part of what we call the Sustainable Development Unit, which has 6 practices. These guidelines are incredibly relevant for the Sustainable Development Unit because we have the Ag Global Practice where I sit. We also have the Environment Practice. We have our Social Practice. We also have our Climate Group and Water Group and so on. And all of those units or practices have very, very strong relationships to what we call the Environmental and Social Framework of the World Bank, the ESF. And all of our projects, which are very much supported by the FAO, they give a lot of technical support. Those projects get ratings for their environment, social risks, as when it comes to programs. So as we're talking in this dimension, the social risks are really, really important to us. Very often environmental risk, you can really look at the environmental risks now through satellites and through a lot of technology. But a lot of social risk is still needing to get on the ground. It's still needing these kind of tools to work and support not just the World Bank team, but importantly, how we deliver and work with our clients. The ethos of the ESF, the Environmental Social Framework, is actually to build the capacity of the government, our clients, to actually take this forward. So this is relevant at least 2 or 3 levels, not just from the field and to the World Bank, but also to the governments we work with. So let's just sort of talk very, very momentarily about scale. The portfolio that I work on in the Agriculture and Food Global Practice is currently a lending of $28 billion to governments. So $28 billion is a significant lending. And this is looking at programs which are usually on average $300 to $400 million of lending to governments. But I think importantly and very relevant to this conversation is that 45% of our portfolio, or approximately $13 billion, is going direct to smallholders and SMEs. And the social analysis, the social frameworks that we've been talking about, is very relevant to that whole sector. And I'm very excited, to see these documents coming through. But I see, a great resource, but I also see a great challenge. We're going to have to do a lot of training with our staff. We're going to have to do a lot of training with our clients to make the system work. It's not just about our managers, but it's also very strongly about how our clients can absorb this and also work and work with it as well. So partnering. We'll be looking forward to working with FAO on this work, but we'll also looking at how we can bridge and bring we call them our TTLs, our task team leads, which manage these programs, how those TTLs can be, can really access good online training programs over this and make those training programs incredibly operational so that we can take it very quickly into our portfolio, but also into the pipeline as we develop. Because we have our investment cycle, which FAO is very familiar with. So as we develop the project concept notes, how we go to our quality reviews, how we go to our decision reviews, and how we present to the board is under immense scrutiny for the environmental and social side. So all these tools are incredibly relevant. So I've tried to be quick and tried to be brief, but very excited to continue with FAO on this journey. Thank you very much. Back to you, Giovanni.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chris, for that very interesting description also on the impact that the World Bank project have on the field and the amount of people that they reach, and therefore the importance of getting the social aspects right, given the potential large impact that they have in the government that are borrowing from you. But you also mentioned the issue of challenges, and I would like to dwell on that with the next panelist, Ms. Beatrice Gerli. Let me ask you, you are working with the IFAD, and from your perspective, what are the most important challenges or capacity gaps that you see in undertaking social analysis at the field level, considering the time limitations posed by short missions, which are a constant by all IFIs when designing new projects? In other words, how can these guidelines help strengthen capacities both at the national and at the local levels? Please go ahead, Beatrice.
Thank you very much, Giovanni, and thank you very much for having me today. I'm very, very pleased to be at this launch event, and I agree with my colleague Chris that this is a tremendous effort that is really going to help IFAD as much as the other IFIs to deliver more and better on our investments. So rural development projects often involve complex and interconnected social, economic, and environmental issues. And as my colleagues Ida Christensen and Valeria Casavola already pointed out, limited time frame for design processes as well as shrinking budgets hinder the ability to comprehensively understand these interdependencies as well as specific aspects that each of these issues might bear. So these constraints in particular hinder the ability to conduct comprehensive social analysis, including community consultations, in-depth interviews. And these limitations can result in very superficial insights and may lead us to overlook critical nuances in the community dynamics. So in particular, both time and budget constraints typically lead to overlook vulnerable, marginalized groups within the community, or simply to overlook the community's diversity, typically represented by women, youth, and indigenous peoples' unique opportunities and challenges. So these type of omissions can really result in projects that do not address the needs of different groups adequately, or that hinder the development of effective and context-specific strategies. So I actually would like to share with you a very interesting example from IFAD portfolio. It's about the second phase of the PASITIP project, the Participatory Small-Scale Irrigation Development Project. And as the name says, the project focused on promoting small-scale irrigation systems in Ethiopia, designed to ensure year-round production. So while the project was designed, however, I would say that the time dedicated to social analysis was rather limited, and this led to unintentionally exacerbate the workload for women by introducing these irrigation systems. So because precisely they were meant to increase production all year round, this led to increase the workload of women without addressing the issue of workload division within the household. So women end up working more than before without having a corresponding reduction in their workload within their households. So in addition to this, these systems amplify the workload and also increase additional burden in terms of operation, maintenance, really failing to redistribute this additional workload among different household members. So as a result of this issue, women beneficiaries within their families were boycotting the adoption of such irrigation systems, and PASITIP had to take action on this, and it decided precisely to deepen the social analysis of the geographical and social context of its target population to better understand what was the issue and obviously identify solutions. So social analysis led to enhance the understanding of the different gender roles, the power dynamics, issues of control within the households, how to achieve a more equitable division of labor, and how to foster improved joint decision-making regarding crucial production decisions. So this analysis, this social analysis, was compounded also by the use of a gender transformative methodology. It's a gender transformative methodology specific to the Ethiopian context called gender model family, which helped to trigger deeper understanding, but also very profound changes within the household and fostering more balanced division of labor, joint decision-making on production and on overall resource management, also on finance matter, really leading to a noticeable increase in mutual respect among household members, and also redistributing the workload among them. So this helped women to free up their time from some of the household chores, allowing them to invest more time in the production that was facilitated by the irrigation scheme supported by the project. So This successfully led to recalibrate project activities, and ultimately we had over 4,000 households using about 60 irrigation schemes, successfully operationalizing them. So this is really an interesting example, I believe, of how social inclusion analysis is really a fundamental tool to ensure not only project relevance to its target group, but also ultimately its practical feasibility. And this example, I think, also brings up a very important point that is supported by IFAD's body of research, and in particular, a paper that we published in partnership with the other Rome-based agencies on an IFRI, in the context of the Joint Program on Rural Women Economic Empowerment. And that's that. And it points to the fact that good social inclusion work and good work, in this case, specifically on gender equality, needs to be intentional. So it doesn't just happen, but needs to build on sound understanding of social inclusion issues, leading therefore to related programmatic interventions that can leverage specific opportunities and address the specific challenges of a diverse target group. So we very much welcome the social inclusion guidelines. We really look forward to continue partnering with FAO in their rollout. And we're very excited that these guidelines capitalize on good practices from different development organizations and can help us provide some cutting-edge guidance and tools to development practitioners, field practitioners, as well as managers. Thank you very much, and over to you again, Giovanni.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. That was a really very interesting example that shows how sometimes projects can have unintended consequences, but also how these kind of tools that we are launching today can help project designers and practitioners improve the situation, and, as you say, purposely address these social inclusion aspects to have much better outcomes through the project implementation. So we continue with the challenges, because we realize the challenges are many. And I'll move on now to our next panelist, Ms. Ana Muja Rotebuka from the African Development Bank. And what I would like to ask you is whether you think that the African Development Bank is currently paying sufficient attention to identifying and addressing social risk throughout the investment project cycle, while proactively promoting social and development empowerment. More concretely, what are so at least some of the main challenges that you see in doing so, and how could you use these guides to help strengthen institutional capacities for better social outcomes? The floor is yours, Anna. Please go ahead.
Okay, so thank you, Giovanni, for that very long question that I have to respond to in the next 5 minutes. But on the African Development Bank front, let me straight away mention that the bank has a host of strategies, policies, guidelines that focus and address or guide the matters related to human development, that address gender, youth engagement, poverty reduction, labor, decent work. All this is, we have a host of policies at the bank. But the most outright pathway that I want to highlight here is the bank's environmental and social safeguard policies. They're embedded in the bank's integrated safeguard system. If you have interacted with the bank, you know that we've had one integrated safeguard system since 2013 that we recently updated. This integrated safeguard system is mandatory and is applicable to the private and public operations. So we apply it we apply it on the entire project cycle, and it specifies how we can identify and address social risks throughout the cycle. And because it is mandatory, it gives us an opportunity also to proactively promote social development and empowerment along the way. We don't only stop at identifying these social risks, but we also put measures in place to make sure that we promote social development. If you've been interacting with the bank, we will know that we've just updated the integrated safeguard system. We have the latest kid on the block. we have a new one that we've used the opportunity to address emerging issues and some improvements on existing ones. In terms of social safeguards, we have now we have addressed more in detail, in comprehensively, issues of stakeholder engagement, inclusion and discrimination, issues of social exploitation, issues of gender-based violence, labor, modern slavery, fragility, and so on. So you can see we are talked there in terms of identifying new emerging issues to be included in our safeguards. We leverage our position as a financial institution to compel our borrowers to adequately identify these issues and make sure that the mitigation measures are implemented. Again, since this is mandatory for both private and public sector, we also leverage our position to make sure that we have stringent finance clauses in the financing agreements that make the bank clients implement and implement these requirements of the bank. Of course, non-compliance to this attracts very serious penalties, like suspension of disbursement. We have internal mechanisms that follow up on these projects to see that, yes, we did not stop only at identifying these issues. First of all, that we identified them correctly, that the implementation that promotes social development and empowerment is adequate. If we don't, we have an internal mechanism of an independent review mechanism. We have evaluation, we have a semi-autonomous evaluation department in the bank that look to see that what we are doing is sufficient in terms of identifying these risks and making sure that we adequately mitigate these risks. And we don't only stop there, but we promote social development. Now, in terms of challenge, I will quickly run through a few challenges that we have. We have issues of capacity on the continent where we work, and it's not only on the bank side that we have. I think on the bank we've done well in the last 2 years in terms of staffing. We are doing well in terms of our own capacity to follow up on these issues. But among our regional member countries, it is still a big challenge. We are not sitting back. We are actively carrying out capacity development activities to make sure that we train our clients, we train our project implementation units in the regional member countries to adequately be able to identify and address these social risks. We also have the issue of appreciation of the importance of social analysis. There is a drive for infrastructure on the continent that everybody gives priority. These social issues, yes, they are very important. We have a lot of projects and initiatives and efforts to address them, to incorporate them in what we do. But prioritizing social issues is still a challenge on the regional member countries front, where people look at infrastructures, which is the ultimate objective. It's a challenge which I know we don't face alone, but also other development partners on the continent. Now, we also have, of course, we are not sitting back. There's a lot of effort we are doing. We all know that the bank has the umbrella high fives that the bank is implementing, which include Feed Africa and which include improve the quality of life on the African continent. These two items on the high fives are very critical when we start talking of how the bank is responding to social issues on the continent. It's not just mainstreaming them in the project processing and implementation, but that there's deliberate effort to mainstream issues of poverty reduction, of gender in the entire bank, in the bank strategy and in the bank portfolio across the continent. How do we see these guidelines? How can we use these guidelines to help us strengthen the institutional capacities? As I mentioned, capacity is an issue, and we welcome these guidelines. I went through them, and I find them that they are very important. I know the sector specific. We have the Feed Africa activities, the agriculture sector that we implement many projects. These are very handy. The e-learning is very important for us. Yes, we also have our own e-learning on how to mainstream environment and social safeguards and all other aspects in the whole entire project cycle. But we would be happy to collaborate with you on the e-learning and see how we can all benefit, especially where we work together on the African continent. We know that we are also working on our own guidance and notes. The ISS that I mentioned is not will be operationalized in the beginning of 2024. The bank is actively working on its own guidance and notes even for the practitioners in the field out there, and we are hoping that in some aspects we will not entirely have to reinvent the wheel, but we will work with you, and we can also benefit from the work that you've already done on these guidelines. So I know I have only 5 minutes. I try to summarize, and I thank you for the opportunity. I welcome you to engage with us. On our website, we have the bank's integrated safeguard system and other relevant policies that can give you more information, more than I'm able to present during this session, on how the bank works to identify and address social risks in investment, entire project cycle. We can even engage outside this forum. But thank you very much for inviting us and for giving us an opportunity to speak a little bit. And we really welcome these guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Anna, for your participation. We are very pleased to have you in this conversation. And I'm also very reassured by your confirmation that your safeguards apply both not only to government, but also to the private sector. And talking about the private sector is something we'll do now with Francesca Russo from the European Investment Bank, given that they also engage not only with governments, but also with private sector companies. And the question is the following, Francesca: how do you think we can enable private companies and impact investors they're also your clients, or even entice greater interest and commitment to promote people-centered investments that work for all, leaving no one behind? Do you think that are there any concrete ways through which we can encourage the practical uptake of the guides and the e-learning by the private promoters that EIB works with? The floor is yours, Francesca.
Thank you, Giovanni. Thank you very much also for having the EIB participating in this discussion. Ooh, the private sector. Well, first of all, I was a bit surprised to see there is a little bit of a low participation in this forum of the private sector. This is a shame, because as a matter of fact, I think that these guides are relevant to the private sector in multiple ways. Indeed, I would encourage the use of these guides because they can be considered first of all, as a reference, so basically as a framework for social analysis. In them, I found consolidated definitions. They lay down tasks to be performed. They provide indicators, suggest methodologies. In other words, they're very practical in their use. In fact, I think there are several ways that these guides, and more in general, the social analysis, can contribute to the private sector investment strategies in the agri-food sector. First of all, by adding contributing to an important element, such as adding data information related to the social dynamics, the assessment of social risks, these dimensions into the decision-making process of any private sector operator. And this approach is important to the EIB, and it's not only appreciated, but is also requested when the EIB is considering the financing of a private sector client. Indeed, the EIB is promoting sustainable inclusive development, and this is at the heart of the bank objectives and its lending strategies. I don't know if you know, but last year, for instance, the EIB, as similar to the other MDBs, also they launched, and it was approved, the EIB Group Environmental and Social Policy, which has an overarching framework for the EIB commitment up to 2030. and is placing sustainable finance at the center of everything that the EIB does for public and private sectors. And among these, there are some areas of intervention, or better said, area of actions. So action to promote non-discrimination and social inclusions, to reduce vulnerabilities, action to promote gender equality that enable equal access regardless of gender, but to the benefits, the services, employment opportunities that all this financing in its operations, basically financed by the EIB, even support, or even specifically support the economic empowerment of women. These are all at the core of the EIB, this EIB environment and social policies, also the EIB gender strategy and gender action plans. Other aspects that I see relevant, and I'm naming them because I can see them reflected in this guide, indeed, are, for instance, promotion of decent working conditions, and therefore zero tolerance or no tolerance to child labor, forced labor, how to identify where this, the situation that may lead to this risk, the identification of the social risks in itself. Commitment, we have a strong commitment, for instance, to support the recovery from post-disaster and post-conflict situations, but also a commitment to build peaceful, stable society through activities and promotion of investment in fragile states. Of course, in order to do so, we need first of all to understand the dynamics that are in the places where the EIB would like to intervene and to support a private sector client. So to make it quite short, if you want, our clients in this sense can contribute to the achievement of the EIB objective and commitments by fulfilling all the requirements that we put in place, namely throughout our standards, which are, again, part of this general policy. But more specifically, if you want, there are a lot of entry points that we see that could be where the use of this, the adoption, if you want, of these guides could be relevant from a private sector operator. Throughout the project cycle, let it be from the very beginning, we have something that we also call the EIB strategic approach to fragile and fragility and conflict, which dictates us to have a conflict sensitivity analysis. And I can see all the elements of a conflict, well, most of the elements of the conflict sensitivity analysis also laid down in your guides. We, as good to implement, you say, our gender strategy and the gender action plan. So, for instance, we categorize project and willing promoters, meaning willing clients, specifically private sector clients, asking them if they have identified through gender analysis, for instance, some structural gaps that they are willing to contribute to fulfill. And this, I see the guide being quite useful also in laying down how this gender analysis could be carried out, how to identify this gap, how to propose also gap bridging activities. I see a lot of potentials also on the fact that in the fulfillment of the requirements that the EIB as well as the other development partners put in throughout their standards, most of the time we do rely on external practitioners. But while the external practitioner may or may not be more familiar with the jargon, with the methodologies proposed, I think it would be quite important for the private sector clients also, and maybe even their environment and social units or ESG units or anything that is equivalent to familiarize with these guides and familiarize with what is and how is carried out a social analysis in general, in order to be able to define as well their own strategies also in terms of corporate social responsibilities, how to better well, of course, with a long-term vision of acquiring social license, but also how to better contribute to the fulfillment of potentials of the environment they're operating in. And
Right.
therefore, so in this way, I would say I would encourage the private sector to pick up and participate to in the e-learning sessions, but also to make a good use of these guides.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Francesca, for your thoughts on how to include private sector, which, as we know, are indeed the main actors in the agri-food systems. We are running a little bit out of time, but we have one more question for our panelist, Adriano Campolina here from FAO. So let me go straight to you and maybe ask you to please be concise. So the question that we have for you, Adriano, is the following. As you know, investment projects are typically government-owned and led, and they are guided by broader investment policies and strategies. Now, the question is, in your view, how can these guidelines complement the normative work that you work on in FAO that aims at mainstreaming gender, youth, and inclusion into government efforts to address food system transformations? Please go ahead, Adriano.
Thank you very much, Giovanni, and congratulations, colleagues, for the launch of the guide and e-learning. It does complement extremely well. I think I can mention a few, our governance framework that was also recently launched, the Rural Extreme Poverty Framework that was launched in 2019, the gender framework, other approaches and methodologies such as the territorial development approach that the organization does work in. So I do believe that the guide really complements and brings them together in a very important way. First, by building on a very, very strong conceptual framework. I think that really is a fundamental element of that. Second, not only bringing together different tools and approaches, and there are many of them across the three guides, but also indicate a fit-for-purpose way of using those tools strategically. So it's not just putting the tools together in a box, but being clear on how to make an informed choice of what tool to use to achieve what purpose. And actually extremely practical, extremely action-oriented, extremely helpful both to decision makers at strategy level, to designers, and to implementers. Let me give an example on how I see the very practical nature of that. Recently, ESP with ESA, we're working together with our country office of FAO in Ethiopia to support the government into implementing a investment on agro-commodity processing zones. And we did exactly the use of a number of combined tools that are in the guide, from poverty profiles analysis and then baseline studies to understand very well the poverty trends on each one of the areas of the investment, a qualitative study with territorial approach to understand the historical process, to understand power relations, to understand how different interests were materializing, and how the different organizations and institutions were involved. And of course, a number of issues of inequality, conflicting interests, power asymmetries came about. And I do believe that by having done that myself with many colleagues, I can see the relevance, the importance, and the extremely good contribution that the guide will make. And will make particularly to a change, to address some fundamental challenge that we have at all levels, at the level of the strategy development for investments, of investments design, and investments implementation. I think the first one that I believe the guides and the e-learn will help immensely is to address the lack of buy-in. And let me be open about that. I think there is quite a number of stakeholders that do see the importance of poverty, but see that as a lateral, as a next conversation, as a next issue. I think the guide somehow brings the social analysis and brings poverty and the understanding of poverty and the consequences of investment on poverty, both in terms of avoiding doing any harm and to make the investment inclusive to the center of the process. It's not an afterthought, but it becomes part of the very beginning and to the center of the design, the strategizing, the design, and the implementation. I think it also addresses fundamental gaps on capacities, and that's capacity again across all levels, and we have seen that in many ways. But it also addresses the way of thinking and address the way people actually think and implement investments. For instance, it addressed the lack of voice and agency of people in situation of vulnerability on influencing both the strategy, the design, and the implementation of investments. I think that is a fundamental step forward. It does allow to reverse the trends of top-down investments that only bring inclusivity considerations at the very end. So in short, the guide and the e-learning, from my perspective, are very, very concrete tools to make the principle of leave no one behind true. And the principle of leave no one behind is not a simple change. It's a fundamental change on mindset. It's a fundamental change on our understanding of poverty and the causes of poverty, and also fundamental change on the types of incentives. So I believe that the guide and the learning will help on making leave no one behind a reality on the way we support governments on pursuing agro-food systems investments that can be transformative. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Adriano, for your response and the encouragement of the use of these guidelines. And I would like to extend that to all the viewers and participants, not only to use the guidelines and take advantage of them, but also to distribute them and to promote them among your respective networks. We believe, and I think it has been sufficiently clear throughout our panel discussion, that people see value in these guidelines, and there is a huge potential to increase impact of all the investment operations. So we thank you very much all for the participation. Please note that we also have added some responses to some of the questions directly into the question and answer bottom that you find at the end where you post the questions. And from FAO and from all the partners that participated in the event, we want to thank you all for having taken the time to be with us, and we'll appreciate that you also provide us feedback on the use of the guidelines. With that, I would like to close the event, and thank you all.